So just to start, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
My name is Ahmad Muna. I'm 30 years old. I am a resident of East Jerusalem. I was born and raised here. I went to pursue my education abroad. I came back to Jerusalem 6 years ago, and I have been working in my family business since then. It's the educational bookshop in Salahuddin Street, East Jerusalem. Yeah, that's what I do.
So I want to start by just asking you what's been going on in Jerusalem in the last couple of weeks. We've seen headlines about clashes between Palestinians and Israelis. And we've also seen kind of horrific videos of, Palestinians being attacked by the Israeli military and far-right settlers. So I just wanted you to give us a bit of a picture of what's been happening.
So what has actually happened, how did it all start, is the night of the Independence Day in Israel. There were a lot of Israeli settlers who were going to the old city to pray, to visit, etc. And the Israeli army closed a huge part of Damascus Gate. Now, a lot of people may not know what does Damascus Gate represent, and I think I'll try to answer this while I talk. But Damascus Gate is not only a gate, it is actually an area, there's a lot of stairs where you can enter it from different places, depending which side of Jerusalem you're coming from. And it's a place where a lot of people meet, sit down, and meet friends and so on. So what the Israelis did, they actually locked down the area with barriers all around where people can sit. And they left alleyways for people, places to go in, up, down to the Damascus Gate from, and another alleyway for people to go up from. There's also police present 24/7. Never mind the holidays; it is always there. While all of this existed, they put the alleyways, and understood. I guess they did put them there because they didn't want Palestinians to be hanging out while settlers going up and down the old city using Damascus. What happened the day after that is we were entering the third day. It was the beginning of Ramadan. The Independence Day was the third day of Ramadan. On Ramadan, there are prayers. Muslims living in the city, they go to pray. And a lot of gatherings and festivals and celebrations happened outside after iftar, after the sunset, outside the Damascus Gate in that area, where actually people use it as a open theater, meet friends, music, food, people selling things. It's a festy month. So what has happened after that day is the Israeli forces did not remove the barriers where it has closed, and they continue to have the alleyways, which is actually it's restricting people movement because it looks like a checkpoint. It actually looks like you are walking through a Colombia checkpoint or a Bethlehem checkpoint. It looks very bad. Also, let alone that actually the people who live in the old city live in small houses, crowded, and the Damascus Gate area is actually their backyard garden. It literally is their backyard garden. But people, when they want to meet, they meet outside Damascus Gate. They want to go eat something, they go, and if one wants to meet somebody else, they go and meet outside Damascus Gate. It's their hangout place, if that makes sense. And it more so, actually, speaking about COVID, more so during COVID, because during COVID, a lot of places were closed, no coffee shops, no places to eat, to meet, and so on. And therefore, people ended up gathering even more. Of course, people also after iftar, they're not working. There's a lot more free time during this month. And hence the youth, I'd say, the youth of Jerusalem would hang out in that area. And the barriers were actually affecting them negatively because they can't move and so on and use the space. And hence the clashes start, if you want to call them clashes. Although the Palestinian youth were not actually being violent, they were standing there protesting, demonstrating, telling the army they want the barriers to be removed. But they didn't. They didn't start the violence. They were not violent. There was no stone throwing and so on. This happened for 3 or 4 nights in a row until some Israeli right-wing settler movements decided to to say that they want to help the Israeli police and the Israeli army to fight back the Palestinians protesting in Damascus Gate. And this is when we start to see escalations happen, because these Israeli settlers were coming down from Jaffa Street, from West Jerusalem down to East Jerusalem, and they were attacking Palestinians. They attacked Palestinian properties. They put fire on a building behind the street here. They destroyed cars in the streets. They stopped buses in the streets and attacked people in them. They were stopping cars in the streets, and if they know the driver is a Palestinian or the passengers are Palestinians, they will attack the car. And that, of course, the retaliation process started. I mean, it's once it's enough for a couple of these events to happen for a fight back to start too. So the Palestinians also, there were clashes between not only the Palestinians and the police, but also the Palestinians and the Israeli settlers. At the same time, this lasted for about 10 days so far, up until 2 days ago, up until Friday or Saturday. But what has, I think, up until Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, or Friday. What also happened during this time is where some human rights institutions and lawyers here who basically sent letters to the army, to the government, asking them, why is this area closed? Give us a reason why this area closed, otherwise let's open it. So there were a couple of letters back and forth. One of them said that they closed it because it's festival reasons and it's festival season, and they didn't want a lot of people together, let alone that there was festival seasons 2 weeks ago for the Jewish holidays, and they were not closed. So that was the answer back, is there were festivals before and they never closed it, so why now? And then eventually the lawyers got to a point with the police or with the government that actually there's no valid security reason to close off the area. And therefore there was a police, on Friday, there was a police order to remove the barriers. The barriers were removed, but and I mean, you can say that this was the end of the story. From a Palestinian point of view, it's a victory. It's a small victory because we didn't, liberate prisoners or took land back, but we actually claimed our area back. It's, in my opinion, it was an attempt to create new facts on the ground. Israel built 2 new spots for the police, like watchtowers outside Damascus Gate 3 years ago. And that went without complaints. And you were just creating, now a new fact on the ground was created. And with this one, the youth felt like their own space has been invaded. And that's what instigated them to fight back. And I'm glad that they succeeded. We shouldn't be too excited about it, but we should also acknowledge that this was something that the new fact on the ground was going to be created by the state, and the Palestinians in East Jerusalem decided, no, not this time. And as I said, especially that this place is actually for Palestinians in East Jerusalem, this is their priest space. This is their area. And the Israeli army didn't close off a street in West Jerusalem, and Palestinians were complaining about it. Palestinians were complaining simply, we want to hang out in this place. This is our garden. We want to hang out in it, and you can't just close it for no reason. And with that, I think they were successful, and I'm happy that they were successful. Something that I must say is after that, it has already been 2 or 3 days. And the Palestinians also go there now every day to celebrate. And the gathering of the Palestinians, them celebrating, chanting, putting flags up, singing, is now an issue for the police because they don't want so many people chanting and singing in one place. And so if you want, the clashes have continued, but now for a different reason, not to put barriers in or take them out, but rather that we don't want so many Palestinians to be hanging out here, singing, chanting, putting flags up and so on. But it is, I would say the peak was on maybe last Thursday of tension, but it's easing out a little bit. The Israeli police presence does not help the case, because if there's Israeli police presence, that's going to provoke the Palestinians in this area, then there may be tension rising again. So I think the right approach is that this has been done now. Barriers have been removed. The Palestinians are happy. The Israeli don't have a valid reason to put these barriers up, and there's no valid reason to have police presence in this area anymore. I think this is how it should go forward.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I mean, for people who don't know, yeah, I mean that whole area around Damascus Gate and into the old city is usually, you know, you have soldiers just walking around with machine guns and, you know, and stuff like that. And Israeli, you know, the Israeli army do this where they kind of create a pretext to increase their security presence. And then if nothing happens, then they just keep it there permanently. So I think you're absolutely right that this is a victory. Can I ask you just to say a little bit about the kind of far right settlers? Because, you know, people don't often understand, you know, how these settlers operate in you know, in the old cities where they kind of take over people's homes, evict people. We've seen kind of attacks on Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah and other places as well. So if you could just tell us a little bit about them and how they operate and the kind of impunity they have to attack Palestinians.
I was actually posting a couple of videos on this on my social media. The audacity of not only, I mean, I was watching this video where one settler says, we want death to Arabs or death to Palestinians. And then this guy asks her, like, do you really mean this? She was like, maybe I don't mean it in that way, but I mean it another way. And then he says, how? And she says, you know, maybe I'm going to be nice about it. She said, I'm going to be nice about it. I'm a nice person. We shouldn't maybe kill them, but we should just let them leave their homes so we can live in their place. And that's being nice. I think to get to a place where you can say this and think that you are being nice saying this, and to not the consequences of saying this, because there are no consequences. Nobody's gonna. The Israeli government are not going to take her to court for saying such a thing because it's acceptable. It's not unacceptable, at least. But to get to that point is scary. But that is actually the mentality. You ask me how these people think. This is exactly how they think, and they think it's okay to think this way. And they have the audacity to say it out loud.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So do you think the recent Israeli election has had any kind of bearing on the far right and, you know, being emboldened to act this way, or I don't know?
I don't think that the election itself has a direct effect, a direct relation to what's happening here, especially with this Damascus Gate tension rising. But I think there's two things actually. There's definitely a problem with the democratic system in Israel, with the way the elections are being conducted, and with so many different parties taking place and taking part in the elections, which is not actually leading anywhere. We're heading into a fifth election here in Israel within 2 years, where we can't actually form a proper government that can last for more than 6 months in any case. But there's also a rise in the speech, in the right-wing speech in Israel. So that even when somebody like the Likud party, for example, that is considered right-wing, not too far right, not religious far right-wing, but right enough, cannot actually form government, although it can form a government with the Arab parties, but they don't want to take them into coalition, because some of the other people that will be in the coalition that are far right-wing religious parties are speaking against them, that they will not be in a government where it depends on Palestinians or on Arab voters or on Arab members of the Knesset. I think that speech itself, some of the heads of these parties say that if we will not take a right-wing government, we will not take a right-wing government if it's going to have any Arab member, is actually sending a message to the streets in Israel that we don't want them. We don't want to live with them. We don't want them to be part of our society. And that, indeed, of course, that increases racism, that increases settler colonial thoughts. and people feel the courage to go out and destroy property based on this. And feel that the police cannot act on its own with the Palestinians, and they need to go out and help the police fight back Palestinians. So of course, yes, I think it does have an effect.
Okay, brilliant. Just one last question. So we've seen, you've said the protests that happened in Jerusalem, which were, were kind of victorious. We've also seen kind of solidarity protests in other parts of the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip, which some kind of outlets have been describing it as a kind of Palestinian uprising. I mean, do you see this as a kind of movement that could grow into other areas and take on other issues, or?
My simple answer is no. While this was happening, there were tension also rising in other neighborhoods in East Jerusalem. There were fightbacks against the police and so on. But this is not this was not first of all riots. I mean, they were not riots. First of all, it's not like riot, and it's not like everywhere, anywhere, it's just anything against the government or against the police. It's not. It was actually, it did have one single simple demand: remove the bloody barriers, and it's just as simple as this. It was not a revolution, it was not an intifada, it was not an uprising, it was just none of this. The clashes did happen because people see the news, other Palestinians in other cities see the news, and they feel angry, and then clashes do happen. It doesn't help when the Israeli army is everywhere also, because it's provocative. But I don't think this is going into an uprising. I don't think this is a third or a fourth intifada or whatever. I think this was just a simple demand. We want this place back. We remove the barriers, and it's fine. And the proof to this is that tension has not been mounting in the last days. After the barriers have been moved, I'm not going to say this place is heaven now, but actually tension has decreased from its high levels from last week. So I don't think, no, I wouldn't call it this way. And actually, this was also something that was not organized by anybody. It was just the kids, the youth in the streets, the people of the old city that decided, and the surrounding area, that decided we want this place back. It was not a leader who asked for this. It was not the mayor of Jerusalem. It was not the minister of Jerusalem. It was not the prime minister. It was not the authority. It was not the leadership. It was not the parties. It was just no one. It was no Fatah, no Hamas, no one. It was just people who wanted to use the space. It was from the people to the people, from the people of Jerusalem to the people of Jerusalem.
But you think there's scope for people to take this as an example to protest against other issues, and not necessarily wait for Palestinian leadership or other kind of leaders, and just deal with stuff?
It's very good question, actually. It's worth mentioning that this is not actually the first time that such thing happened. We did have something very similar to this happen in 2017, when Israel decided to put electronic doors at the gates of the mosque, of Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the surrounding area, for people going in have to go through the metal doors. And the Palestinians protested in East Jerusalem for weeks, and eventually they removed them, and they were never put up. I think Israel tries its luck every few years, every few months, try the luck, let's do something here and see what the reaction is. There was something also similar. They didn't make it to the news, though it was very local level, where they decided to destroy an area next to a cemetery down the street in the old city and build a garden. And apparently the land was for al-Waqf. And after they started, like 2-3 days into the construction, the Waqf noticed, and they put a couple of lawyers in, and the lawyers managed to stop the Israelis from building there, because that land is for private owner, and they can't just take it private owner for an institution, for the Islamic trust, and they can't just take it and build a garden there as they please. But that was done quickly. They didn't lapse into tension and so on. This time it didn't go fair. I think, answering your question, you have to be smart in how you fight. I think you definitely need this, and you need diplomatic missions, and you need negotiations, and you need tension when need be, when you have to protest and stand there and say, you also, some people might resort to this. And I don't think it's a bad option, but it can't be an option for everything. It can't be the solution to the Palestinian-Israeli problem. But I think when I think it does bring results. If anybody if you've seen the Budros film of Five Broken Cameras, people were protesting because they didn't want the wall to go in their land. They didn't fully succeed in not having a wall there, but eventually they moved the wall few meters, few hundred meters, whatever they moved it. At least there was a change, there was a result, and I think it's a good way to. You have to weigh the problem, see if this is workable or not. Can you achieve it by protesting? And if you think you can, you definitely should.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, thanks for joining us today, and also solidarity with you.